Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Today, we're thrilled to present The Unforeseen Cadenza. This touching tale follows Anna, a gifted pianist whose dream audition in Paris takes an unexpected turn when she aids a stranger. It's a story of compassion, lost opportunities, and a destiny reimagined. Please hit that subscribe button and enjoy the story. The crisp Parisian autumn air bit at Anna's exposed skin, a chilling contrast to the feverish warmth thrumming beneath her ribs. Her fingers, usually a blur of confident motion across ivory keys, trembled slightly as she clutched the worn leather case containing her most prized possession, a sheaf of meticulously annotated sheet music. Each note, each crescendo and diminuendo was a fragment of a dream she had nursed since childhood in the humid embrace of her Vietnamese homeland. Today, that dream was poised on the precipice of reality, a scholarship audition at the prestigious Conservatoire National de Musique et de Danse de Paris. This wasn't merely an audition, it was her very definition, her desperate attempt to escape the stifling expectations of a life dictated by others, a life she felt had always been a dissonant chord. Anna, at 25, carried the weight of a quiet past etched subtly around her eyes. Her long raven hair, a stark contrast to her pale skin, cascaded down her back like a midnight river, often distracting from the fierce determination burning in her gaze. Today, it was meticulously braided, a small act of discipline amidst the swirling chaos of her emotions. Her simple white blouse, chosen for its understated elegance, felt like a fragile shield against the enormity of the moment, while her beige A-line skirt, a practical choice for the long journey, felt miles away from the shimmering gowns of the concert halls she so yearned to grace. She walked with a purpose, born of desperation, each step a silent prayer, echoing the measured rhythm of the classical pieces she would soon perform. But beneath the surface of her calm demeanor, a tempest brewed. The lonely echoes of countless hours spent practicing in a small, damp room, the silent judgments of a family who saw music as a fleeting hobby rather than a sacred calling. She was an outsider, a solitary note, struggling to find its place in a grand symphony. The Rue de Rivoli, usually a bustling tapestry of tourists and Parisian chic, seemed to hold its breath. The late afternoon sun, a weak watercolor wash in the pale sky, painted the ancient buildings in muted gold and sepia tones. A lone street musician, oblivious to Anna's internal turmoil, coaxed a melancholic accordion melody from his instrument, its mournful notes weaving through the air like a lament. The stark contrast between the beauty surrounding her and the gnawing anxiety within created a palpable tension, a silent opera unfolding in her soul. She could almost taste the fear, sharp and metallic, mingling with the lingering sweetness of the croissant she'd had for breakfast. Suddenly, a piercing, almost primal gasp shattered the fragile peace. It wasn't a cry of pain, but something far more visceral, a sound ripped from the very core of a failing body. Anna, her thoughts instantly yanked from the intricate fingerings of a Chopin nocturne, spun around. Her heart, which had been performing its own frantic allegro, skipped a beat. A woman, impeccably dressed in a tailored tweed coat, her silver hair pulled back in a severe bun, had crumpled to the cobblestones like a discarded marionette. Her face, etched with a lifetime of elegance, was now a mask of ashen terror, her hand clawing at her chest as if trying to tear out the very source of her agony. A wave of icy dread washed over Anna, instantly eclipsing the pressure of her audition. The woman, clearly in her late 70s, looked fragile, a porcelain doll teetering on the edge of shattering. Instinct, raw and untamed, took over. Without a second thought, she dropped her precious music case, the soft thud of leather on stone echoing like a forgotten chord, and sprinted towards the fallen figure. Time seemed to stretch and distort, each millisecond a desperate eternity. The melancholic accordion music faded into a dull hum, replaced by the deafening roar of her own pulse. In that moment, the conservatoire, the scholarship, the years of sacrifice, all faded into an insignificant whisper against the urgent symphony of a life hanging in the balance. Her past, her future, everything she thought defined her, became secondary to the desperate present. As she knelt beside the woman who was now struggling for breath, her fingers instinctively reaching for a pulse, a sleek, jet-black Rolls-Royce Phantom glided to a silent halt a few feet away. The tinted window of the driver's side lowered almost imperceptibly, revealing the sharp, unreadable gaze of a man. Monsieur Antoine Dubois. His eyes, cold as glacial ice, fixed on the scene, a silent, almost predatory assessment. He was a man accustomed to control, to orchestrating every facet of his world, and this sudden, chaotic interruption was clearly an unwelcome anomaly. A faint, almost imperceptible frown creased his forehead, hinting at a deep-seated irritation that simmered beneath his polished exterior. He wasn't merely observing, he was scrutinizing, his gaze stripping away the layers of the immediate crisis to reveal something else, something hidden beneath the surface of the human drama unfolding before him. For Anna, caught in the terrifying immediacy of the moment, her hands pressing against the clammy skin of the dying woman, his presence was an unseen shadow, an ominous counterpoint to the desperate melody of her efforts. The street, moments ago a canvas of Parisian charm, had transformed into a stage, and Anna, unwittingly, had just stepped into the spotlight. The cries of "Madame, Madame Dubois" echoed through the narrow Parisian street, mingling with the urgent blare of distant sirens. Anna's hands, trained to navigate the intricate landscape of a piano keyboard, now worked with a desperate, unfamiliar rhythm, pressing gently against Madame Dubois' wrist, searching for a pulse. It was faint, a fluttering butterfly wing beneath her fingertips, barely there. The elderly woman's breathing was shallow, ragged gasps tearing through her frail frame like torn silk. Her eyes, once alight with the wisdom of a lifetime, were now glazed over, fixed on some unseen terror. "Madame, stay with me, please," Anna pleaded, her voice a desperate, unsung melody. The medical training she'd received as a mandatory first aid course in high school, long relegated to the dusty corners of her memory, roared back to life. She remembered the crucial steps: call for help, clear the airway, loosen restrictive clothing. Her fingers fumbled with the top button of Madame Dubois' elegant tweed coat, the fabric suddenly feeling coarse and unyielding against her trembling hands. The crisp autumn air, which had moments ago kissed her skin, now seemed to mock her, chilling her to the bone with its indifference. A shadow fell over them, long and imposing. Monsieur Antoine Dubois. He had stepped closer, his tailored suit a dark, unyielding silhouette against the fading light. His initial shock had hardened into something cold and analytical, his gaze sweeping over the scene with the detached precision of a surgeon. His jaw was clenched, a muscle twitching almost imperceptibly, betraying a flicker of emotion beneath his meticulously composed facade. He wasn't merely a wealthy man, he was a titan, a conqueror of boardrooms and markets, accustomed to seeing every situation as a problem to be solved, every individual a pawn in a larger game. This vulnerability, this raw human frailty unfolding before him, was an affront to his perfectly ordered world. "What is happening here?" Antoine's voice was low, laced with an authoritative edge that sent a shiver down Anna's spine. It was a voice that commanded obedience, not empathy. "Who are you, and what have you done to my mother?"
Anna looked up, her own fear momentarily overshadowed by a surge of indignation. I'm trying to help her. She collapsed. I think it's her heart." Her voice, usually soft and melodic, was now sharp with urgency, a dissonant chord in the tense air. Antoine's eyes narrowed, sweeping over Anna's simple attire, then resting, almost contemptuously, on the worn leather music case lying abandoned on the cobblestones. A fleeting, cynical smirk played on his lips. "A convenient coincidence, wouldn't you say? A distressed artist stumbling upon a wealthy woman. A classic Parisian street act, perhaps?" His words were daggers, each one piercing Anna's raw vulnerability, stripping away her good intentions and leaving her exposed. A cold wave of despair washed over Anna. She had risked everything, her audition, her future, to help, and this man, this embodiment of Parisian arrogance, was accusing her of manipulation. The injustice burned. "How dare you?" she retorted, her voice trembling, not from fear, but from a burgeoning anger. "I am not some opportunist. I am a student, and I just happened to be here." The words, however, felt hollow, swallowed by the vast chasm of his disbelief. The sirens grew louder, a wailing crescendo approaching rapidly. The street, once serene, was now a vortex of mounting tension. Passers-by, drawn by the commotion, began to gather, their whispers a hushed, judgmental chorus. Anna felt their eyes, like tiny needles, pricking at her skin. The golden glow of the late afternoon sun, which had painted the scene in such romantic hues just moments ago, now felt oppressive, spotlighting her despair. It was a cruel irony, the very light that promised warmth now exposing her to such chilling scrutiny. Suddenly, Madame Dubois let out a tortured groan, her body convulsing slightly. Anna instinctively tightened her grip, her gentle touch a stark contrast to the rough cobblestones beneath them. "Madam, hold on! The ambulance is coming," she urged, her voice laced with desperation. She glanced at her watch, a flicker of panic igniting in her chest. The audition. It was long over. The conservatoire, the scholarship, the life she had so painstakingly envisioned, all of it was slipping away, like sand through her fingers. Each tick of the second hand was a nail hammered into the coffin of her dreams. A sharp, almost imperious voice cut through the air. "Get out of the way, young lady." The paramedics, efficient and businesslike, were finally on the scene, their movements a stark contrast to the swirling emotions. They gently but firmly pushed Anna aside. Reluctantly, she moved back, her heart a tangled knot of fear and disappointment. She watched, helpless, as they worked on Madame Dubois, their specialized equipment a cold, clinical barrier between her and the woman she had tried to save. Monsieur Dubois stepped forward, his eyes never leaving his mother. He spoke to the paramedics in clipped, precise French, his tone betraying a controlled urgency that was far more unnerving than outright panic. He barked orders to his driver, who had been standing stiffly by the Rolls-Royce, about clearing a path for the ambulance. It was a performance of power, a demonstration that even in this moment of vulnerability, he was still the master of his domain. As Madame Dubois was carefully loaded onto the stretcher, her eyes fluttered open, meeting Anna's. A faint, almost imperceptible nod. It was a gesture of gratitude, a silent acknowledgement that spoke volumes. A tiny beacon of warmth in the cold, accusing glare of her son. Anna's breath hitched. That single gesture was a balm to her wounded spirit, a confirmation that her sacrifice, her desperate efforts, had not been in vain. It was a fleeting connection, a fragile thread woven between two strangers amidst the chaos, a quiet counterpoint to the raging storm.
The ambulance doors slammed shut with a sickening thud, severing that fragile connection. The sirens wailed again, fading into the distance, taking with them not just Madame Dubois, but also the last vestiges of Anna's hope for the audition. The street, now eerily quiet, seemed to mock her. The crowd began to disperse, their curious gazes lingering for a moment too long on Anna before they melted back into the Parisian rhythm. She was left alone on the cold cobblestones, the lingering scent of autumn leaves and faint exhaust fumes filling the air. Monsieur Dubois, now free from the immediate crisis, turned his gaze back to Anna. His face was still a mask of controlled emotions, but something in his eyes had shifted, a flicker of something almost akin to curiosity warring with his ingrained skepticism. He saw the music case lying on the ground, still abandoned, a silent testament to her swift, selfless act. He noticed the tear tracks on her cheeks, not the dramatic tears of a manipulator, but the quiet, dignified grief of someone who had truly cared. The Conservatoire audition, I presume. Antoine's voice was less accusatory now, more speculative. You were late, I imagine. Missed your chance? He wasn't asking for information. He was testing her, probing for a reaction. Anna, her voice a mere whisper, felt the weight of her decision pressing down on her. Yes, she managed, her throat tight with unshed tears. It was today. The word hung in the air, heavy with unspoken regret and the bitter taste of a dream deferred. She bent down to pick up her music case, its familiar weight now feeling like a burden, a reminder of what she had lost. Each note, each carefully penciled annotation seemed to mock her, a silent chorus of what might have been. The melodies within felt shattered, their vibrant harmonies reduced to a discordant hum. Antoine watched her, his gaze unwavering. He noticed the delicate strength in her hands as she clutched the case, the quiet resilience in her slumped shoulders. A complex mix of emotions played across his features: doubt, grudging respect, and perhaps a hint of something he hadn't felt in a very long time. This young woman was not what he expected. She was not a calculating opportunist. She was a different kind of music, a melody he hadn't yet learned to decipher. The silence stretched between them, a vast, echoing space filled with unspoken questions and the lingering scent of autumn leaves. The stage was set not for an audition, but for a different kind of performance, one where the stakes were far higher than a scholarship, and the score was yet to be written. The Rolls-Royce gleamed behind him, a symbol of his power, yet in that moment it seemed to shrink, overshadowed by the quiet dignity of the young woman who had just sacrificed her dream for a stranger. The cadenza, unforeseen and profound, had just begun. The chill of the Parisian autumn evening seemed to sink into Anna's very bones, colder than any winter in her tropical homeland. It wasn't just the lowering temperature, it was the icy grip of profound disappointment. The street, once a vibrant artery of life, now felt like a silent, indifferent corridor stretching endlessly before her. Her music case, clutched tightly against her chest, offered no comfort. It was a tomb of shattered hopes, each carefully penned note now a mocking reminder of the Conservatoire audition she had sacrificed. The grand halls of the Conservatoire, once shimmering with the promise of her future, now felt like an impenetrable fortress, its gates slammed shut by her own hand. The last trace of the ambulance's siren had long vanished, swallowed by the city's vast indifference. The curious onlookers, their fleeting attention satisfied, had dispersed like smoke, leaving Anna utterly alone. Alone with the biting wind, the lingering scent of damp leaves,
and the crushing weight of her decision. She imagined the stern faces of the audition panel, their impatient glances at the empty chair, the finality of their judgment echoing in the silent room.
A phantom ache settled in her chest, mirroring the pain she had just witnessed in Madame Dubois. It was a different kind of heart attack, one that struck at the very core of her dreams. She looked up, her gaze inadvertently drawn to the imposing figure of Monsieur Antoine Dubois. He stood by his Rolls-Royce, a sentinel of silent judgment. His posture, usually so commanding, seemed to carry a subtle rigidity, a tension that hinted at something deeper than mere irritation. He hadn't left, and his continued presence was a discordant note in the quiet aftermath. His eyes, still fixed on her with that unsettling intensity, were like windows into a complex, perhaps even troubled soul. He was a man carved from granite, but Anna, even in her despair, sensed fissures beneath the polished surface. He was the epitome of the cold, unyielding ambition she had fled in her own family. Yet there was a flicker, a momentary softness in his gaze that contradicted his harsh words. "So," Antoine's voice cut through the stillness, devoid of the previous accusation, but still laced with a cool, detached curiosity. "The audition, you believe it's truly lost to you?" He wasn't asking for her pity, he was probing, assessing, like a master chess player calculating his opponent's next move. Anna clutched her music case tighter. "Yes," she whispered, the word raw with emotion. "It was for a scholarship. They don't give second chances." She felt a sudden, inexplicable urge to confess everything. The years of quiet rebellion, the countless hours of practice hidden from disapproving eyes, the burning desire to prove her worth through music. But the words caught in her throat. How could this man, who embodied everything she sought to escape, possibly understand? Antoine's gaze shifted to the abandoned taxi that had arrived just before the ambulance, its meter still ticking idly. "You were clearly in a rush, yet you chose to stop." His question wasn't accusatory, but a genuine inquiry, a rare crack in his impenetrable facade. He was a man driven by logic and calculated risks, and Anna's spontaneous, selfless act was a perplexing anomaly. Anna met his gaze, her own eyes, though red-rimmed, holding a defiant spark. "Because it was the right thing to do," she stated, her voice gaining a fragile strength. "Some things are more important than an audition, monsieur." A sharp contrast, a simple truth against his intricate world of power and ambition. A muscle in Antoine's jaw twitched again. He took a slow, deliberate step closer, his presence commanding, but somehow less threatening now. "My mother," he began, his voice a low rumble. "She is complicated. She values certain things above all else, things I often find impractical." His words were a reluctant admission, a glimpse into a fractured family dynamic. She was on her way to a private concert, a tribute to her past, a collection of pieces she hasn't played publicly in years, a moment of great personal significance for her. Anna's brow furrowed. "She's a musician?" she asked, a spark of shared understanding igniting within her. The world suddenly seemed a little smaller, a little less indifferent. Antoine nodded, a faint, almost imperceptible softening in his eyes. A pianist, a prodigy in her youth, but that was before responsibilities, before the demands of the family business. His voice held a subtle undercurrent of something that sounded like regret, or perhaps a deep-seated melancholy. It was a revelation, a sudden opening into his world, hinting at a past where art might have been a source of conflict, a battleground between passion and duty. He, too, had a cadenza, a personal narrative of choices and sacrifices, though on a scale far removed from Anna's. She played a specific piece tonight, Antoine continued, almost to himself, his gaze drifting towards the now empty spot where his mother had fallen. A very personal piece, a sonata she composed herself. It was meant to be her final public performance. The weight of those words, final public performance, hung in the air, heavy with unspoken implications. It was clear that this was not just about a concert, it was about legacy, about a deeply personal connection to a lost art. A sudden, sharp memory pierced Anna's despair. Madame Dubois' hand, reaching out to her, the faint, almost imperceptible nod of gratitude. And then, the faint, raspy whisper, "Maman, merci, ma fille. Thank you, my daughter." The words echoed in Anna's mind, a poignant melody of connection. "She called me ma fille," Anna murmured, almost to herself. "My daughter." Antoine's head snapped up, his cold eyes widening almost imperceptibly. He stared at Anna, a profound shift occurring in his gaze. The cynicism, the suspicion, began to recede, replaced by a dawning realization, a new understanding that slowly unfurled across his features. It was as if a powerful, silent chord had been struck, resonating with a truth he had been unwilling to acknowledge. His mother, the stoic, demanding matriarch, had chosen to acknowledge this young, unknown woman as her own, if only for a fleeting, desperate moment. This was not a calculated move. It was a raw, unadulterated expression of gratitude. "She did?" Antoine's voice was softer now, tinged with a fragile incredulity. The question was not about facts, but about emotion, about a profound personal connection he hadn't seen coming. This was a crack in his carefully constructed armor, a breach in the walls he had built around himself. Anna nodded, her own eyes filled with unshed tears, just as they were putting her in the ambulance. The weight of this revelation settled between them, a silent, powerful force. Antoine looked away, his gaze fixed on the golden leaves swirling in the wind, a storm brewing beneath the surface of his usually impassive face. The arrogance began to peel away, revealing layers of something akin to vulnerability, perhaps even regret. He had been so quick to judge, to dismiss, to assume the worst. And his own mother, the woman he had always seen as a symbol of duty and obligation, had seen something pure and invaluable in this stranger. He took a deep, shuddering breath, the kind that indicated a profound internal struggle. "My mother has always been complex, brilliant, demanding, but fiercely loyal to those she trusts. And she trusts very few." His voice was low, almost a confession. To call someone ma fille is extraordinary. It means she saw something in you, something beyond the circumstances. The words hung in the air, a belated apology, a grudging recognition of Anna's true character. Anna felt a strange mix of emotions, relief that her intentions were finally acknowledged, but also a burgeoning sense of curiosity about this enigmatic man and his equally enigmatic mother. The silence that followed was different now, not the oppressive silence of judgment, but a charged quietude, pregnant with unspoken questions and possibilities. Antoine finally turned back to Anna, his expression now completely transformed. The coldness had melted away, replaced by a gaze that was still intense, but now held a flicker of something akin to profound respect, perhaps even awe. "You missed your audition for her," he stated, not as a question, but as a newfound certainty. "You sacrificed your dream for a stranger, my mother." He paused,
his voice dropping to a near whisper, laden with a weight of newfound understanding. That is something money cannot buy. A new emotion, powerful and unexpected, began to stir within Anna. It wasn't triumph, but a quiet validation. She had lost her audition, yes, but in that loss, she had gained something far more precious, the unexpected acknowledgement of her humanity, a profound, unscripted note in the unforeseen cadenza of her life. The wind whipped around them, a chilling premonition. But for the first time since Madame Dubois collapsed, Anna felt a strange, burgeoning warmth. The stage was set, and the unexpected turn of events had just changed the entire score. The silence that fell between Anna and Monsieur Antoine Dubois after his quiet acknowledgement was thick, heavy, with the weight of unspoken truths and newfound understanding. The crisp Parisian air, once a source of biting cold, now felt charged with a strange, almost electric tension. Anna watched him, her gaze unwavering. The hard lines of his face seemed to soften, almost imperceptibly, as if a sculptor's hand had briefly warmed the cold marble. The Rolls-Royce gleamed behind him, a silent sentinel, its luxurious facade a stark contrast to the raw human drama that had just unfolded. Antoine ran a hand over his perfectly slicked back hair, a gesture of rare vulnerability. "My mother," he began, his voice a low rumble, tinged with an unfamiliar note of remorse. "She is everything to me, even if we often clash. Even if her artistic pursuits sometimes seemed like a distraction from the real world I was being groomed for." The word groomed hung in the air, a subtle hint at the rigid expectations that had shaped his own life, a life built on strategy and acquisition, where sentimentality was a dangerous flaw. He was not just a wealthy man, he was a product of a powerful, unyielding dynasty, trained from birth to suppress emotion in favor of logic and control. His every word, his every controlled gesture was a testament to this ingrained discipline. Yet now, that discipline seemed to waver, threatened by the unexpected. He turned his gaze back to Anna, his eyes no longer cold and assessing, but holding a new, curious depth. "You say you missed an audition for a scholarship at the conservatoire. A scholarship for a pianist, I presume?" His tone was no longer a probe, but a genuine inquiry, seeking confirmation of a revelation that was shaking the very foundations of his preconceived notions. Anna nodded, her grip tightening on her music case. The leather felt warm now, a small comfort. "Yes, for piano." Her voice was still quiet, but imbued with a quiet dignity that belied her youthful appearance. "It was everything, the chance to study, to truly live my music." She didn't elaborate on the sacrifices, the years spent battling her family's insistence on a practical career, the countless hours of practice snatched in secret moments. But the unspoken history hung in the air, a silent testament to her unwavering dedication. Antoine's gaze shifted to the music case, a flicker of recognition in his eyes. "A grand opportunity, then, and you sacrificed it without hesitation." It wasn't a question, but a statement of undeniable fact, a truth that resonated deeply within him, stirring echoes of his own suppressed desires. He, too, had once harbored artistic inclinations, a secret passion for sculpting that had been ruthlessly quashed by his father, deemed frivolous and unbecoming of a Dubois heir. The memory, long buried beneath layers of corporate ambition, surfaced with a startling clarity, a ghost from a past he rarely acknowledged. He saw in Anna not just a selfless young woman, but a reflection of a part of himself he had deliberately silenced. "Such altruism is rare in this city," Antoine continued, his voice almost a murmur, tinged with a cynicism born of long experience. "Rare in this world, even. Most would have weighed the cost, the personal gain." He paused, a strange, calculating glint entering his eyes, a familiar flicker of the shrewd businessman returning, but now infused with a nascent sense of moral complexity. My mother's health is, of course, paramount, but you've given me something else to consider.
Anna looked at him, bewildered. What could he possibly mean? Her sacrifice was clear, simple, and now painfully final. There were no hidden clauses, no secret advantages. You see, Antoine continued, stepping closer, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, my mother, Madame Cécile Dubois, is not just a renowned artist. She is also the majority shareholder in Dubois Holdings, my family's corporation, a powerful force, even from her sickbed. And she is particularly sensitive to matters of character, especially when it comes to those who interact with her. A subtle warning, a hint of the intricate web of power and influence that surrounded him. Anna felt a knot tighten in her stomach. This was more than just a personal encounter. She had stumbled into the heart of a powerful, perhaps dangerous family drama. The air crackled with a new kind of tension, no longer just emotional, but strategic. Her will, a rather intricate document, hinges on certain clauses regarding her legacy, Antoine elaborated, his gaze fixed on Anna, as if reading her very thoughts. Specifically, her artistic legacy. She wishes to establish a foundation, a grand musical academy, something grander than the conservatoire even. And she has stipulated that its future leadership, its very soul, must be chosen not just for talent, but for integrity, for a genuine, selfless passion for the arts, not merely for fame or fortune. A chill ran down Anna's spine. This was a revelation of seismic proportions. She had merely helped an old woman, and now she found herself entangled in a labyrinth of power, wealth, and profound familial expectations. The image of the elegant Madame Dubois, frail and gasping for breath, suddenly seemed to morph into a formidable matriarch, her seemingly simple act of gratitude, a strategic chess move. And she saw that integrity in you, Antoine stated, his voice devoid of emotion, yet carrying a profound weight. That single gesture, that almost imperceptible nod, that whisper of ma fille, it was a profound declaration. My mother, in her most vulnerable moment, found something she values more than power, more than prestige. She found authenticity. He paused, letting the words hang in the air, then continued, his voice regaining some of its earlier steeliness, but now tinged with a new, almost reluctant admiration. I confess, I am a man of logic, of calculated risks. I did not believe in such sentimentality. I've built my empire on numbers and unwavering ambition. But my mother's intuition is rarely wrong. And she has explicitly stated, even in her weakened state, that she wants you found. She wants to know who you are and why you sacrificed your future for her. Anna stood transfixed, a whirlwind of emotions swirling within her. Fear, disbelief, a flicker of hope that seemed too fragile to grasp. This was a twist she never could have anticipated, a cadenza of destiny far more complex than any she had ever played. The conservatoire, the coveted scholarship, they suddenly felt distant, almost trivial in comparison to the unexpected path that was now unfolding before her. Antoine reached into his inner jacket pocket, pulling out a slim, elegant business card. It was engraved with the Dubois Holdings logo and his personal contact information. "This is my card," he said, extending it to her. His fingers brushed hers, and Anna felt a surprising warmth, a momentary connection that transcended the vast chasm of their different worlds.
My mother will want to speak with you when she recovers, and I believe I owe you an apology and perhaps an opportunity." Anna took the card, her fingers tracing the embossed letters. Dubois Holdings. The name alone conjured images of vast wealth, impenetrable power, and a world utterly alien to her. She looked up at Antoine, her eyes searching his for a hidden motive, a cynical trap. But his gaze, while still intense, held only a newfound respect, a grudging acknowledgement of something he couldn't control or manipulate.
"An opportunity?" Anna echoed, the word a fragile question. Her mind raced, grappling with the implications. Could this be a new path? A different kind of melody? Or was it merely another intricate trap in the complex symphony of the wealthy? Antoine offered a ghost of a smile, a rare, almost shy expression that softened his stern features. "Let's just say, my mother has a very specific vision for her musical legacy, and after today, I believe you might be precisely the missing note in that composition. It would be mutually beneficial." His words were still framed in the language of business, of mutual gain, but there was a subtle undercurrent of something deeper, a quiet curiosity that hinted at a shift in his own worldview. The man who had judged her so harshly now seemed to be offering a hand, not out of charity, but out of a profound, unexpected realization. As he turned to re-enter his Rolls-Royce, leaving Anna standing alone on the cobblestones, a single golden leaf, dislodged by a sudden gust of wind, swirled down and landed gently on her music case. It was a beautiful, poignant image, a symbol of autumn's ending and the promise of a new beginning. The car's engine purred to life, a low, powerful growl that vibrated through the quiet street. Then it glided away, its taillights disappearing into the encroaching twilight. Anna was left with the crisp business card in her hand, a tangible link to a world she had only ever glimpsed from afar. The Grand Conservatoire now seemed a distant memory, a path untaken. But in its place, a new, unforeseen cadenza was beginning to play, its notes complex, intriguing, and utterly unpredictable. The cold echo of regret still lingered, but a new, fragile hope, like the first tentative notes of a forgotten melody, was beginning to bloom in the twilight. She didn't know what this new chapter would bring, but for the first time in a long while, the future didn't feel like a locked door. It felt like an open score, waiting for her to compose its next movement. 5 years later, the chill of a Parisian spring evening, unlike the biting autumn air of that fateful day, felt like a caress against Anna's skin. The Conservatoire National Supérieur de Musique et de Danse de Paris, once an unattainable fortress, now stood as a familiar, beloved landmark in her rearview mirror. Not as a former dream, but as a prestigious institution where she, against all odds, been invited to give a guest lecture on the interplay of classical music and improvisational harmony. Her hair, still raven black, was now often styled in a sophisticated chignon, a subtle nod to her growth and newfound poise. Her white blouse was now silk, her beige skirt a tailored design, reflecting not a shift in her character, but an evolution in her circumstance. The years had been a whirlwind, a relentless crescendo of learning, performance, and unexpected discoveries. After that fateful day on Rue de Rivoli, Anna had accepted Monsieur Antoine Dubois' extraordinary offer. It wasn't a handout, but a profound investment in talent and, more importantly, in integrity. He had personally overseen her enrollment at the prestigious École Normale de Musique de Paris, a rival institution that, under his quiet influence,
recognized her raw potential, her unwavering spirit, and the unique story that now underscored her musical journey. The Conservatoire, in its rigid adherence to rules, had missed a cadenza that would redefine her life. Anna's relationship with Madame Cécile Dubois had blossomed into something beautiful and profound. The elderly pianist, now frail but remarkably resilient, had become Anna's most ardent supporter, her mentor, and her dearest friend. From her elegant Parisian apartment overlooking the Seine, Madame Dubois had guided Anna with wisdom gleaned from a lifetime of artistic pursuit. They would spend hours discussing music, the delicate nuances of a Chopin prelude, the explosive power of a Beethoven sonata.
Madame Dubois saw in Anna the unquenched fire of her own youth, a melody she had been forced to silence for the sake of familial duty. She poured into Anna all the lessons, the passions, and the unspoken melodies that had been suppressed by her own life's practical demands. Antoine Dubois, the man carved from granite, had undergone a slow, almost imperceptible metamorphosis. He had observed Anna's dedication, her unwavering passion, and the genuine affection between her and his mother. His initial cynicism had gradually melted away, replaced by a grudging respect that deepened into something akin to admiration. He saw that Anna was not merely talented, she possessed a profound emotional intelligence, a rare purity of spirit that resonated with a long-dormant part of himself. Their interactions, once sharp and guarded, had softened into a professional camaraderie that occasionally bordered on genuine, if unspoken, warmth. He still commanded his empire with ruthless efficiency, but there was a new, almost imperceptible humanity in his eyes, a depth he hadn't possessed before. He had come to understand that true wealth wasn't just about financial capital, but about the intangible currency of compassion and authenticity. The ultimate climax of the story arrived with the grand unveiling of the Cécile Dubois Conservatory of Arts, a magnificent institution founded by Madame Dubois' legacy and meticulously overseen by Antoine. Its mission to nurture artistic talent based not just on skill, but on character, on the belief that true art stemmed from a compassionate heart. And the surprise announcement that evening, orchestrated by Madame Dubois with a knowing twinkle in her eye and Antoine's reluctant but proud agreement, was that Anna would be the conservatory's first director of piano studies. The grand inauguration gala was a spectacle of Parisian elegance. The crème de la crème, society, critics, and musicians mingled under crystal chandeliers. Anna, dressed in a breathtaking midnight blue gown, stood beside Madame Dubois on the stage. The old artist, frail but beaming, held Anna's hand. Ladies and gentlemen, Madame Dubois' voice, though softer with age, resonated with unwavering conviction. Tonight, we celebrate not just the birth of a new institution, but the triumph of a timeless virtue. 5 years ago, a young woman, a stranger, sacrificed her own profound dream to save my life. She embodies the very soul of this conservatory. She paused, her gaze sweeping over the audience, resting finally on Antoine, who stood in the front row, his stoic expression betraying a hint of pride. That young woman, Madame Dubois continued, her voice swelling with emotion, is Anna. And she is not just an extraordinary artist, she is an extraordinary human being. She has shown us that the most beautiful music is often played not on keys, but in the silent chambers of a compassionate heart. As she spoke, a wave of poignant clarity washed over Anna. She remembered the rush of adrenaline, the desperation to save a life, the bitter sting of losing her audition. But now, all those painful memories were chords in a grander symphony, leading her to this unforeseen triumph. The conservatoire she had dreamt of was a single note. This conservatory, born of an act of selfless kindness, was an entire orchestra, a harmonious echo of her own journey. Then came the grand reveal, the announcement of Anna's appointment. A gasp rippled through the esteemed audience, followed by a thunderous ovation. Anna's heart swelled with a mixture of overwhelming gratitude and humble pride. This wasn't just a job, it was a testament to the belief that character truly mattered. Later that evening, after the last guests had departed, Anna found herself alone in a quiet alcove with Antoine. He looked at her, his gaze unusually direct, stripped of all its former layers of suspicion and calculation.
"My mother is very pleased," he said, a rare, genuine smile gracing his lips. "She truly sees you as the embodiment of her legacy." He hesitated, then continued, his voice softer than she had ever heard it. "And I was wrong about you, Anna. Profoundly wrong. Your actions that day taught me a lesson that years in business never could. That some things, some values are truly priceless." He paused, his gaze deepening. "My own path, the one I chose, was paved with ambition and strategy. But watching my mother find such solace and purpose in your presence, it has shown me a different kind of wealth, a richness of spirit I hadn't known existed." He reached out, his hand gently covering hers, a gesture that spoke volumes. "My mother's health is fragile, but her spirit is indomitable. She found her final, most meaningful cadenza in you, Anna." Anna looked at him, truly seeing him for the first time. Not just the powerful businessman, but a man burdened by his own legacy, now finding unexpected redemption through her. "And you, Monsieur Dubois," she said, her voice gentle, "you are learning to conduct a different kind of orchestra, aren't you?" A genuine, warm laugh escaped Antoine, a sound Anna had never heard before. It was a melody of relief, of a soul shedding its heavy armor. "Perhaps," he admitted, his eyes twinkling, "perhaps I am. And you, Anna, you are the unexpected soloist in this family's grand, unfolding symphony." The night ended with Anna at the grand piano in the conservatory's main hall, playing for Madame Dubois, who listened from her wheelchair, a contented smile on her face. Anna chose the very piece Madame Dubois had composed, the personal sonata she was meant to perform that fateful night. As her fingers danced across the keys, the notes soared, filling the vast hall with a melody that was both sorrowful and triumphant, a reflection of trials overcome and dreams reborn. It was a performance infused with every emotion she had experienced: the fear, the doubt, the desperation, the unexpected kindness, and the profound gratitude. Each note was a whispered memory, a quiet homage to the unseen forces that had orchestrated her fate. This was her true audition, her true performance, not for a scholarship, not for fame, but for the profound human connection that transcended all boundaries. The cadenza, unforeseen and profound, had led her not just to a career, but to a purpose, a family, and a deeper understanding that the most beautiful melodies are often born from life's most unexpected dissonances. Dear cherished audience, thank you for joining us on this emotional journey through the unforeseen cadenza. This story reminds us that life's most profound opportunities often emerge from unexpected moments of compassion. It teaches us the invaluable lesson that true wealth lies not in material possessions, but in the richness of our character and the kindness we extend to others. Anna's unwavering empathy transformed not only her own destiny, but also touched the lives of those around her. May her story inspire us all to choose kindness,
even when faced with personal sacrifice, for sometimes the greatest losses lead to the most extraordinary gains. Thank you. Please share your thoughts in the comments below, hit that like button, and subscribe to our channel for more uplifting tales. Thank you.